Welcome to another episode of Snow Country for Old Men, a podcast about life in Japan's legendary Yukiguni. It's a beautiful time of year here in the Snow Country. We are now well into spring and the cherry blossoms have come and gone in the area of Nagano that I live. But for those who are living or travelling more to the north in the Snow Country over the next week or two, you can still enjoy the blossoms as the northern bloom comes later. As a matter of fact, as a guide, I recommend to all of my guests to actually head into the regional areas of Japan to enjoy the blossoms, because you can often get away from the crowds you'll be sharing them with in Tokyo, Kyoto and Osaka. So if you're still in a position to head to the northern parts of the Snow Country in the coming weeks, I hope you can do so. As mentioned in previous episodes, this podcast brings you the stories of people carving out lives in the Snow Country of Japan. As such, the episodes will be quite diverse as we profile different people, both Japanese and foreigners, who've chosen to make the Snow Country their home and have a story to tell in terms of their work, creative pursuits and lifestyles. In doing so, I hope to raise the profile of the Snow Country and entice more people to visit, or better yet, to make the move and live here. I think whether you're visiting Japan, intending to move here, or already here, there's a temptation, like in most countries, not to see past the cities and what they have to offer. Indeed, most international visitors to Japan don't leave the major cities, or if they do so as day trips. Likewise, foreign residents of Japan mostly choose to reside in the big cities for obvious reasons related to work and convenience. It's my belief, however, that regional Japan has as much to offer. In fact, I believe it has more to offer than the cities. This podcast is all about the Snow Country, and in profiling the stories of different people finding many ways to live and succeed here, I hope it inspires you to visit, or if you're in a position to move here, then we'd love for you to join us. Today's episode dives into a big and important topic in Japan, and that is the issue of unoccupied or abandoned houses. Known as Akiya in Japanese, a word that simply translates to empty house, a huge number of homes are unoccupied or abandoned across the country. I won't state the estimated number just now, as it comes up early in the interview, and it's striking, just to say that it's in the millions. I wanted to do an episode about Akiya early on in this podcast, as I think this term and the general issue of Akiya will continue to come up across episodes. Indeed, it was already mentioned in episode 2 of the podcast when discussing the renovation of an old farmhouse with my guest at that time, Rich Morgan. I think it will keep being raised across many episodes, especially those when we are specifically discussing buying property or renovating homes. So I felt it's best to have an episode dedicated to it, as many people are interested in purchasing Akiya, and given the number of them across Japan and the Snow Country, they can be exceptionally cheap. It's a huge topic, and I wrestled with how to cover it best in today's episode. Rather than trying to discuss everything in relation to Akiya, I felt I'd use this episode as a general introduction to the topic, with an intention to return to it in future. On today's episode, I speak with Murai Shota. Shota lives and works in the small town of Nakano in Nagano. Just to be clear, that's Nakano, Nakano, in Nagano, Nagano, and Shota is tasked with finding solutions for the town's Akiya, an estimated 1,000 empty homes. Shota and I discuss the general topic of Akiya, his role in Nakano, and the curious reality that despite there being so many empty houses in Japan, very few of them are available to purchase. So why is this? Well, firstly, the Akiya problem arises from what many see as Japan's greatest challenge. That is, its decreasing and aging population. Japan's current population is just under 126 million. In 2022, however, Japan lost more than 700,000 people from its population. That's around 0.5%, which I believe was the 12th or 13th year in a row that the population shrank. In fact, in 2022, only one of Japan's 47 prefectures did not experience a decrease in its overall population. Of these, the northern prefectures of the Snow Country, including Akita, Aomori, and Yamagata, saw the highest rates of decrease. But overall, people aged 65 and older now account for around 1/3 of the Japanese population, with 810,000 babies born in 2022. That's 810,000 babies in contrast to 1.44 million deaths. Now, you might think that COVID has skewed these numbers, but not particularly. As mentioned, the population has been decreasing for well over a decade now, and it's set to continue to decline. The projections are stark, with the population projected to drop to around 120 million by 2030, 106 million by 2050, and for those of us who are still here to see it, only 75 million by the end of the century. Just to repeat, the current population is just under 126 million, but if current trends continue, the projection is that by 2100, the Japanese population will be 75 million. Here's the other problem. In order to find work, many young people leave regional areas to move to large cities such as Tokyo after finishing school, leave, and many never come back, making the issue of depopulation most pronounced in regional areas such as the snow country. It's one of the reasons I chose the title of this podcast, in that the snow country is now synonymous with its big snow and old people. Obviously, a rapidly shrinking population equates to lots of empty houses. In my chat with Shota, we go into the exact numbers. In many areas of Japan, including his now home of Nakano, you can walk or drive along roads on which every business is permanently closed and most, if not all, houses are empty. Despite this, it can be notoriously hard to buy them, with only an estimated 3% of all Akiya currently available for purchase. We go into the reasons for that and the challenge of Shota's job in getting owners to list their houses as available to rent or purchase when they may not be ready to part with them. It goes without saying that the issue of depopulation and Akiya represents a huge challenge, but I think it also avails opportunity, and there's an obvious conclusion. It appears unlikely that Japan is suddenly going to start having babies, or at least not experience an increase meaningful enough to arrest the decline of population. And that's where I think that foreigners have a big role to play in Japan's future. In most circumstances, residential properties can be purchased by foreigners with or without the right to reside in Japan. Given the number of unoccupied homes and trend for people to leave regional areas such as the snow country, properties are often exceptionally cheap. When I say that, I'm talking a fraction of what would be a deposit necessary to buy a home in countries like Australia, the United States, or countries across Europe. This provides an opportunity to buy a home without need for a mortgage, a very attractive thing. And many towns also offer subsidies for renovation and enticements to relocate and open businesses. It's also important to say that buying Akiya through databases called Akiya banks is not the only way to purchase one, with many also listed with real estate agents or sold through the community by word of mouth. I hope that this episode piques your interest in the possibility of buying a home in the snow country and reversing the trend to bring people back to this region rather than leaving. Shota is an example of a young man who has chosen to leave his home city of Nagoya, one of Japan's largest cities, to live in the snow country and enjoy a more balanced life. His now home of Nakano is located halfway between Nagano City and Yamanouchi. Yamanouchi is an area that boasts Japan's largest ski resort, Shiga-Kogen, the fourth largest national park in Japan, Joshinetsu Kogen, and the famous hot spring bathing monkeys of Jigokudani. If you're interested in the properties available in that area, check out the links I've included in the show notes for today's episode, and make sure to listen until the end when Shota discusses what he refers to as the 100 yen or $1 project called Akiya Gateway. That is houses available in the Nakano area for literally $1. We recorded the episode in Shota's home, and at times you can hear windows rattling and some activity outside. Shota's audio was very good. Mine was a little off, so apologies about that. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to another episode of Snow Country for Old Men. I'm your host Peter, a freelance writer and guide based in Nagano, Japan, and on today's episode I have the pleasure of speaking with Murai Shota. Shota is based in the small town, or very small city, of Nakano in Nagano, and plays an important role in the revitalization of the town through the sale, purchase, repurposing, and management of its many abandoned homes. And I'm really looking forward to my conversation today with Shota. So Shota, first question, how are you?
I'm great. I feel a bit nervous, but I try my best.
So, as I mentioned today, we're going to be talking about your role in the town of Nakano, which is very nearby Nagano city in terms of the management of the many abandoned or empty homes here. But just to help the listeners, can you just explain where is Nakano in relation to Nagano and Tokyo?
It's like 40 minutes drive from Nagano city. Maybe 3.5 or 4 hours drive to Tokyo by using highway. I went to Tokyo like a couple of weeks ago by Shinkansen. It took like, I don't know, 1.5, I guess.
Yeah, Shinkansen from Tokyo to Nagano city.
Yeah, from Nagano.
Depends on which service you use, right? But it can be like 80 minutes or up to like 110. So yeah, like an hour and a half, right?
Yeah. It was quite fast.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
What reason why did you have to go down to Tokyo?
I wanted to see the concert.
Who did you see?
This event called Punk Spring. So punk musicians gathers once, like Bad Religion, My Chemical Romance, and yeah, I wanted to see them.
It's a festival.
Yeah, it's kind of like festival.
So Shota, do you know the population of Nakano? How many people reside here?
I guess it's like around 40,000.
40,000. So which sounds quite a lot, but it's not really. Is that correct? 'Cause it's quite a spread out area, about 100 kilometers squared. It counts for the whole area of Nakano. Does that sound about correct as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. How would you describe the area of Nakano to someone who's not been here?
Well, the catch copy of this Nakano city is this countryside is just right for you. And when you break it down, it means like you can experience the countryside life, but also at the same time, it's quite convenient to do anything, like in the sense of shopping.
Yeah.
Like we have several hardware stores, grocery stores. When you seek like very wild countryside, like out of nowhere, maybe it's not like right for you.
Yeah.
But when you try to experience like a little bit of both, Nakano City is it might fit your target.
You might describe it as a kind of convenient countryside. You can get that lifestyle.
That's right.
Still
convenient.
Yeah, very nice. How long have you been living here? I know you're not originally from Nakano. How long have you been living here?
Since the summer of 2021, it's been almost 2 years.
2 years. And originally, where are you from? Where's home for you in Japan?
I'm originally from the city called Nagoya, which is kind of located in the middle of Japan Island.
Yeah. Which is one of the largest cities in Japan. Is it the 5th largest city? Is that?
Apparently, I never felt like that when I was living back there, but apparently it's like 3rd largest.
Oh, really? And so you're kind of you're an example of kind of someone who goes against the trend, because you're a young man who is from one of the largest cities in Japan has moved yourself to a very small town, which is kind of the opposite of usually what happens. Young people leave these small towns to go to the big cities of Nagoya, Tokyo, for example. So what's the reason that you made that move from Nagoya to Nakano? What brought you here?
Well, actually, I was not particularly aiming this city. When I was on a period of changing careers, I used to work at the accommodation business, by the way. And I submitted my resume on the online platform called Local Match. It meant for people who want to live in the countryside, and small municipalities accepting that. That's why it's called Local Match. Then somehow I've got an offer from Nakano City. And yeah, like I found the contents of this job is quite interesting. So
what is your role and what job are you performing for Nakano?
So this job is overseen by the national government, and it basically requires 2 conditions. One is moving to the countryside from a bigger city. And number 2 is trying to make the area you chose lively as much as you can, of course. And every one of us, like me, have a mission category. Like agriculture, sightseeing, etc. In my case, it's about how to improve the Akiya program.
Mm-hmm. So can you explain that term Akiya? Because I think for a lot of, obviously most listeners for this podcast are foreigners. They're not going to know the term Akiya. What does that mean in Japanese?
Akiya basically means abandoned house. According to the law, if a property registered as residence, not like vacation house or stores and stuff, but if that thing hasn't been used over a year, it becomes the subject of this law to apply.
Japan's a country which is experience rapid aging and depopulation. So I imagine there's quite a few Akiya, these abandoned homes across Japan. Any idea how many? What is there an estimate to how many homes in Japan are unoccupied?
Based on the data of Statistics Blue, the number of Akiya is almost 8.5 million.
Wow.
Yeah, which means 13%, like 13% of houses are abandoned. And you can assume that this number is going to keep increasing. It's mostly because of aging population being almost 1/3 of this country, and also nuclear familiarization. Are you familiar with this word?
The nuclear family is the kind of classic idea of mother, father, 2 or 3
Yeah,
kids.
like it's totally standard now, like the style of family. Like you don't live with your parents-in-law or your actual parents. Like you only live with your kid or husband or wife.
Yeah.
That causing it difficult for elderly people to be able to manage their property.
So not only do you have an aging population and fewer children being born, but there's a pressure in these areas to get work. And so a lot of young people, when they leave, they will go to the large city like Tokyo, Nagoya, and never come back. Leaving these homes not only empty, or if they are occupied, maybe very older family members living there by themselves who can't maintain it. So is that the trend that you see in Nakano with your job?
Yeah, I see that case a lot.
Do you know in Nakano specifically, this area, how many homes are unoccupied at this time?
It'll be more than 1,000.
More than 1,000 homes.
Yeah.
In a area with a population of about 40,000 people.
Yeah.
That's a pretty amazing number. So I know that across Japan, many towns now maintain what they call Akiya banks, these databases of unoccupied homes in their area. It's important to note, however, that the first step is to get the property listed on the database, which means that somebody needs to speak to the owner to convince them to list them. And this process can take time and can be complicated. So as a result, there are relatively few of those abandoned homes are actually listed on these databases to purchase or to rent. Do you find it's difficult to convince the owners to put their properties onto these databases to make them available?
I think the key point is convincing the elderly people owning Akiya who don't really want to believe that's actually been abandoned. Do you know what I mean? Like they goes back to the property maybe once in a year or once in 2 years for specific national holidays or family occasion or something. So they don't really think it's been abandoned in terms of not being used, right? So they don't want to face the reality, I guess, and because it's very troublesome for them because they don't have enough energy to deal with it. You know what I'm saying? They tend to stop thinking or making any action. That's the fundamental part of these obstacles.
That's interesting what you said there. I hadn't considered that before, that they don't see the home as unoccupied.
Yeah.
Because they're still using it in some way.
Yeah.
And the home plays an important role to them emotionally.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Like it's from stranger's eye, it's a totally different thing. Like the heart, I mean the structure, I mean the house itself and their emotion is separate thing. but somehow it get mixed up for their own mind.
You described it to me before the interview, the process of convincing owners to put their property on this database to make them available to buy or rent.
Yeah.
You described it to me like a game of Jenga,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, like I said, for them to be able to list their Akiya on the platform requires a lot of patience and needs to be able to avoid so many obstacles like, inspections, laws, setting a price range, and more importantly, their feelings, like I just mentioned earlier. And that's why I said it's like a Jenga or something like an obstacle race.
Does that mean that it's very easy to say the wrong thing at the wrong time and stop the process? I mean, you have to listen very carefully to what they want. When you say like a Jenga, things can collapse easily, is the idea?
Yeah, like so many steps that you need to clear.
Yeah.
So of course I listen their needs.
Yeah.
Very carefully.
Yeah.
And then I support them. So I make kind of a strategy, like I make list of like to-do list.
Mm.
And if they cannot do one of them, I help them.
Mm. It's interesting because obviously I'm a foreigner living in Japan and coming from Australia, my home, where people regularly own different properties through their life and often are also purchasing properties as an investment. Of which they hope to make a profit on. The buying of property is typically very transactional. It's really it's a business negotiation.
Yeah.
Japan is a little bit different, or certainly these areas of Japan, with many people actually will never buy or build a home through their entire life.
Yeah.
Or if they do have a property, it's often inherited from the parents. So properties typically stay within families for generations. And so I guess separating the family from the property is a very emotional process.
That's right.
How do you handle that process in convincing people to actually make their property, their family home available?
Yeah, for them to change their mind even a little bit. I am always been aware of visualization to be on any of those phases, like first consultant and investigation and like going to, there are many steps that you need to clear, right? And to be on any of those, I'm very aware of like making things for them to be able to see.
You're tasked with finding a solution to this huge problem in Nakano of empty properties. And so you have to be quite creative in what you do because the solution to one property is not going to be the same for all the properties. And so it's try to help them see what works best for their property. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I meant just exactly like that. Like I need to be showing them an example or needs. Like for owners, I need to I need to tell them like there are a lot of people who wants to move to countryside and they're looking for classic abandoned house. Combinations of DIY and traditional house is lately being a trend in Japan, I guess. As a matter of fact, when you take a look at the data of our inquiries, we get twice as more inquiries from people who are interested in fixing and using Akiya than Akiya owners.
Yeah.
We get a lot of inquiries, like more than 200 in a year.
To purchase or to rent?
Like any any inquiries about Akiya in here. And like more than half of them are from people who wants to use Akiya.
Yeah. So there's more demand for the Akiya than
Akiya owners' inquiries.
Yeah, which is reflective of the larger problem in Japan, as far as I understand. I think the estimate is that despite all these houses being unoccupied, only 3% of them are actually available for purchase for all these reasons that you're talking about, the emotions that get involved. Maybe they can't identify who the owner is. Yeah. So as a result of there being so many unoccupied homes, I can only imagine the property prices must be quite low.
Yes, usually a house that's been built over 25 years has no value or even minus. Only the land still has a value.
The land would have more value if it was just no house at all.
Like they set the price based on the value of land. But if the house is very bad condition, like you gotta tear it down or something, and it takes cost, right?
Yep.
So that amount of cost minus the value of the land.
So in Nakano, I imagine that maybe it's a difficult question to answer, but what types of prices are these homes typically available for?
Actually, this take us back to the matter of obstacles, actually, because the final decision of price is up to the owner, right? So of course we show them the average price based on the size or condition or surrounding environment or something like that. In my experience, under 3 million yen.
3 million, yeah. So 3 million yen.
Japanese yen.
In US, it always fluctuates a bit, but in US dollars, I think that's about 23,000 US. Australian 34,000 Australian dollars.
I guess something like that.
Which are tiny prices compared to the markets in those countries. So
yeah. That's the borderline to be able to find right targets, first or not. Like more than 3 million, it might take some time to find the potential buyers.
So one thing I'm very interested in is the types of people who are contacting you to purchase the properties. Can you talk to me about that? Do they fit a specific profile?
I think yes. Pretty much all of them are assuming Akiya is ridiculously cheap because it is abandoned, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is quite possible to make it cheap comparing building a new house if you handle the process strategically well. But Akiya and just an existing home, like second-hand house, is different. The condition is usually totally different. So you can assume most of Akiya costs certain amount of money to fix.
Cheap to buy, expensive to fix. Possibly.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. But then the DIY becomes good solution for this because you can make the cost cheap if you do renovation by yourself as much as you can.
So a lot of the houses I think that we're talking about are Showa period houses. Is that correct?
Yeah, most of them are Showa era.
Showa. And just to explain to listeners in case you're not familiar, Showa era refers to the reign of Emperor Hirohito. And so the exact dates for what would be considered Showa are 1926 to 1989. This covers quite a long time frame in Japan, from pre-World War II to post-World War II. And construction during those times really, I think, reflected the economic and social realities that Japan was experiencing from the depression of the 1930s, then Japan on its war footing through the 30s and 40s, into the devastation of the war itself and rebuilding, and then the economic boom of the 60s and 70s and 80s. My understanding, Shota, is construction of homes in that time reflects those realities, and they weren't necessarily built to last forever. And they can look a little bit simplistic if you compare them to what came before with the beautiful kominka and these buildings that were a lot stronger and more kind of traditional.
Yeah, they're not really decent, actually.
Because these buildings weren't necessarily built to last.
Yes.
Is it hard to maybe get some people to put value on them? Maybe they think, I'll just let it to tear it down.
Yes.
It wasn't meant to be there forever.
Yeah. Like you said, it not meant to be stand forever. So tear it down could be a solution sometimes. It's not easy to find people who likes those style of houses.
Yeah. And that's part of your role, is to try to match somebody with the correct property, right?
Yeah, because it's not very large amount, but there are a few people who are interested in that sort of Showa style.
Do you have foreigners applying for these properties? And if so, are there any obstacles that you know of for foreigners to purchase or renting these properties?
No, so far I haven't got any inquiry from them. First of all, there's no real estate platform that's friendly for accessing in other language. I mean, if you're capable to understanding Japanese law, it shouldn't be a problem, but then you wouldn't call these people foreigners anymore,
true.
right? Like
True enough.
It's super difficult to understand Japanese law, even for Japanese people. I had one complaint once.
Complaint?
Yeah, from a foreigner. I think he's from America.
Tell me about that. What happened?
I got a message that said, "You can't show such a picture. It's uncomfortable for viewers," something like that. And this came from Akiya Bank platform.
Right.
And I think if you have a culture like open house, do you have like that sort of culture in...
Oh, what do you mean by open house?
Like when you try to sell house, but you make everything tidy and
I see.
Cleaned up very nicely to be able to...
Typically, yes, that would happen.
Show people who wants to buy. But here, there is no such a culture, so
in this case, I imagine that what that person was referring to, maybe inside the house was full of
yeah.
items.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that, because we post the picture of inside of this Akiya as it is, to show the very current condition.
You typically get it as it is.
Yeah.
So if the house is full of furniture and rubbish, and that's, if you purchase it, it's then your problem to resolve it. I imagine there's a lot of variation there between properties, because my understanding is, for example, some properties the owner might agree to clean it out, but let you keep anything you want, and that can be factored into the cost of the property.
Yeah.
But some properties, they come just as they are. So everything that's in there now, everything you don't need, that's going to be, when you buy it, that's going to be your problem to find a solution for all those things once you have the property.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. So we're sitting in your home today, which you are in the process of renovating. Talk to me about this house. Like, how old is it, and do you know much of its history?
We are renting this house from the owner who lives right across the street. We made the type of renting contract as DIY free rent. It means the renter is allowed to do whatever DIY reform they want, as long as it's an upgrade. I don't know exactly how old this house is. Probably middle of Showa era, I think. This used to be the owner's parents' house, and I heard they liked having guests over. Probably why the first floor has like 1, 2, 3 rooms, like kind of connected.
Yeah.
And my wife and I did the self-renovation for the wall and the floor. It used to be tatami.
Tatami, the straw matting.
Yes, that's the one. And we made some event, like workshop for high school kids. Even though doing this much DIY work was very first time for us, but somehow it worked.
What was the condition of this house, Shota, when you moved in?
In our case, the owners are living just right there. So apparently they've been coming to let some air comes in for time to time, because the worst enemy of these structures is humidity. So yeah, the condition was well kept and easy to start the renovation.
And you mentioned the owner's happy with you to do anything that you like in terms of the renovation.
Yeah, I think they didn't really understand the concept at first, but he can see what I'm doing, right? Because he's living right across the street. So he started understanding, and he saw the upgrade, and I think they liked it.
So it's another example of you really helping people through visualization to show them what's possible.
Yes.
And your home is a great example of upcycling, because looking around, it's full of salvaged and repurposed furniture. My understanding is that this is a lot of your work, Shota. Is your creation.
I did it.
Is this just a hobby or something more for you?
It is becoming a part of my hobby because it's fun to think how I can make it work. But as a person who promotes using Akiya, I should be affirmative for recycling old stuff, so it counts as my job too.
To go back as well, you just mentioned that you also get local schools or local school children involved.
Yeah,
a great idea. I imagine they really love being involved in those kind of projects.
Yeah, totally. Like their happy face when they actually made something out of just a piece of wood or something. It's quite priceless.
It's also, I think it's great to get that younger generation involved, because a lot of these real challenges that Japan is facing with aging and it's going to be the younger generation that really experience the impact of that. And I think a lot of the solution, part of the solution is local communities finding the best solution for the challenges they have, rather than looking for the government to step in. And so it strikes me that what you're doing is a huge part of that. Do you feel like you're succeeding in what you're meant to be doing here?
Well, for life, yes, we think we made the right decision. For business, I would say still on the process.
Yep.
Like you mentioned before, about teenager leaves this town and never comes back. But like going through this upcycle DIY or knowing what's happening here, and maybe they get good memory about this hometown, and they might come back in the future, right? That's what I'm secretly aiming, but by the way, but you cannot know. You can't know until actually it happens. So I would say my job is still on the process, and I know these kind of things takes time, and but I do think slightly moving towards the image that I want to share with others. So, in that sense, I'm not that bad.
Welcome back. So Shota, you're still a very young man, and as we mentioned earlier, you're from one of Japan's largest cities in Nagoya. You find yourself at this stage of life living here in Nakano doing this work. If someone had told you 10 years ago that you'd be here doing this, would you have been surprised?
Yeah, totally. I think like 10 years ago, right? So it means like I will be 18. 18 version of me would totally freaks out about what I'm doing. Like he won't even try to understand like what's in there,
Yeah.
Like.
What were you doing in Nagoya before you took on this role in Nakano?
I was working as a manager of hostel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now that's got to be an interesting job. Japanese guests or foreign guests staying there?
More than 80% of them are foreigners.
Any interesting stories?
Well, like there were always troubles every day. Like they get drunk and they get fired and stuff. Once a week at least.
Which nationalities were the most trouble?
Americans.
I thought you were gonna. The reason I asked that is I expected the answer to be Australians, but
the police was already used to see what happens in there because the whole neighborhood was kind of red light district. So.
Oh, really? What's that part of Nagoya called? What's the area?
It's called Sakae.
Sakae?
Yeah, the downtown called Sakae, but this red light district was called Shin Sakae.
And was that job part of the reason that you decided to leave Nagoya and come for a quieter life out here in Nakano?
I think that's totally one of the reasons, right? Like looking back, it was crazy days. I still surprised how clean the street is here.
Yeah, clean and quiet.
Yeah, clean and quiet. This is just my guess, but like there are quite a lot of population of farmers here, so they wake up early in the morning, so they also go sleep early.
So, Shota, your story really reverses the trend of young people leaving these regional areas like Nakano, like the snow country, for large cities like Nagoya. You did just the opposite. So,
yes.
What attracts you about living here at this stage of your life?
Well, I guess I set the importance for slow life with happiness instead of busy life making money. Well, that turns out countryside life isn't really slow and easy. But I'm sure the life quality is way better than before.
I agree, because in a previous episode of the podcast, I was speaking with someone who had made that decision to leave Saitama to come and live in Togari. And he made a similar point that this lifestyle is not any less busy, but it's busier in a healthy way, a better balance.
Yeah, like you need to go outside to do anything, right? Like maybe when you're living in a big city, you can just call an Uber or you don't need to maintain your house, something like that. But in the winter, you need to go snow plowing.
Yeah.
In summer, you need to take care of the garden.
And you're always interacting with the community, right?
Yeah.
Shota, do you feel that what you're trying to do here in finding a solution for the Akiya of this town, is it a vision that you feel like local residents share? Do you feel supported in what you're trying to do here?
Well, in that sense, this activity is still minority because there's no all-round solution about the Akiya problem in Japan. But however, I think people who respect something like craftsmanship tend to care about this matter more seriously than normal people. I met this architect and foreman here and taught me a lot about their work, and it has been a base for assembling my project.
Yeah. Because you don't have any background in architecture or design.
No, absolutely not.
So you
like zero knowledge. Yeah, I've watched a lot of YouTube video, but there's a limit that you can learn from out of just videos, And so I asked these architects and foremen that can I go volunteering, and I actually want to see how you do it. And then they were quite welcome for me, so I learned how to use tools. by watching this foreman's work.
I imagine they're very happy to have you interested, right?
I hope so. and they're super nice people.
What value do you see in saving these buildings?
The sort of craftsmanship that I mentioned earlier, the more you get to know about Japanese architecture, the more you see how much work it took back in the day. And especially now the price of timbers, going higher and higher, right? So it is such a waste to let those Japanese traditional house to rotten just because.
Because I think what you're talking about is trying to lead people to really change their mindset about what to expect instead of just tearing down properties that can be fixed and lived in again.
Right.
And try to kind of upcycle, not just upcycle on a small scale, but really upcycle the community.
Yeah, right.
And take advantage of what's already here in order to make it healthier. And Shota, if anyone listening, I know you said you don't really get any contacts at this time from foreigners, but if somebody were interested in the properties available here in Nakano, what's the next step? How can they see those properties? How could they get in contact with you?
I try to translate my blogs, which has link for Nakano City's Akiya Bank and $1 project called Akiya Gateway. So yeah, just feel free to contact me, and yeah, let me see what I can do.
Fantastic. And just on that note, you mentioned the $1 Akiya or the 100 yen Akiya.
Oh yeah,
that's something which is quite specific to Nakano. Sorry, can you just give me a little information there when you refer to that? What do you mean the $1?
$1 project is for the platform to buy Akiya, which has problematic reason. They cannot usually sell.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just because of surrounded environment or something else.
Something unique to that property is affecting its ability to sell. And so Nakano has a program where they can be purchased for literally $1. That's my understanding.
Yeah, including land, it's just $1 to buy the property. Yeah. But the other cost, like for the paperwork and hiring lawyer and stuff, buyers needs to be in charge.
Yeah. I imagine you must be getting a lot of inquiries about that, yes?
Yeah, we do. The latest one got like more than 50 from all over Japan.
How do you, of those 50, how do you make a decision as to which is the right person?
The process is like this. First, you apply, and then we set the date for coming here to take a look inside of the house. And then on that phase, half of them are give up. And then for the rest of the half, for example, we do online interview. We ask them like, how are you going to use that property? And then eventually the owner choose the predicament.
They can make the choice. Fantastic. So on today's show notes, I'll include a link to your website. I'll also include your Instagram handle. So if anyone's interested to follow you, and if you need to get in contact, you can just use the contacts through either of those and direct it through to Shota.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, he'll be back in time. Shota, why don't we wrap it up there? I feel like I've taken up plenty of your time today. So I really hope you've enjoyed speaking.
Yeah. It was fun. I'm not very sure that I could talk well, but it was great experience, and thank you for inviting me for this show.
No, I've enjoyed it, and I think hopefully listeners get something from this, and maybe can again find reason to come and talk again in the future. It's such a big topic, Akiya.
It does, yeah, actually it does.
So I think there's lots of reasons to chat again. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. Another very big thank you to Shota for making time to speak with me. Make sure to check out the show notes for today's episode for links for anything that we've discussed. The podcast website is www.snowcountryforoldmen.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate and review. You can also follow us on Instagram at Snow Country for Old Men, Twitter at Snow Country Pod, or Facebook Snow Country for Old Men. This is episode 4 of the podcast. For anyone who's listening so far, thank you very much. I hope you're enjoying. I'd love to get some feedback, so feel free to message via the website. Playing out the show today is Izuna Gongen Daiko, a local taiko group. I'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with the next episode. Look forward to talking then. Bye for now.